Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elena Taylor with Generations Health. Thank you so much for joining our program today when nobody else gets it, dealing with people who don't understand the dementia diagnosis, presented by Jennifer FitzPatrick. We are so grateful to have Loudoun County Area Agency of Aging for sponsoring today's program. Everyone is muted to eliminate any background noise. However, this is an interactive program, so please feel free to ask any questions, answer questions, or if you have any comments on the discussion that's taking place. To do so, you can utilize our chat feature. To find the chat, you can scroll over to the bottom of your screen, and there you will find a banner that pops up. On that banner, there is a bubble that says chat. When you click on that, the chat feature will launch and will most likely show up on the right-hand side of the screen. When you use the chat, your comments, questions, and answers will only be seen by our sponsor, our presenter, and myself. This is simply for privacy reasons. Again, we encourage your participation, so please use the chat feature. Jennifer is great about keeping an eye on the chat to answer any questions. Today's presentation will be recorded. If you would like the link to the recording, or if you have any questions following this presentation, please send an email to aaa.support@loudoun.gov. If you need support for you or your loved ones, the Loudoun County AAA has case management services, adult day centers, senior centers, home delivered meals, Medicare counseling, caregiver services, including support groups, as well as many other programs. Please do not hesitate to reach out. The Loudoun County Area Agency on Aging staff are here for you as you navigate your caregiving journey. We are about to get started, but first I would like to ask you a question. Are you looking for ways to deal with people in your family and friend network who don't understand dementia? Are you excited about the idea of getting a free copy of Cruising Through Caregiving, courtesy of Brightview Senior Living? If so, this virtual event was created for you. Our presenter today is the author of Cruising Through Caregiving, Reducing the Stress for Caring for Your Loved One, and a longtime gerontology instructor at Johns Hopkins University Certificate on Aging program. She is one of less than 800 certified speaking professionals worldwide and has been featured in national media such as the Wall Street Journal, Reader's Digest, SiriusXM, CBS, ABC, and many more. When she's not working, she spends her time as a below average first mate on her boat. Please join me in welcoming from Kent Island, Maryland, Jennifer L. FitzPatrick, MSW, LCSWC, and CSP.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much to Loudoun County Area Agency on Aging, again, for sponsoring, and also to Brightview Senior Living for sponsoring free copies of the book that will be mailed directly to your home. Elena is going to put in the chat section several times the link that you can fill out so you can get that free copy of the book. So let's begin. Caregiving for somebody who has Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body, frontotemporal dementia, vascular dementia, or any of the other dementias is probably one of the most stressful things that anyone can take on. But when you're the only one that gets it, you're the only one that understands what's happening with your loved one, it feels even more exhausting. It feels really isolating. So today, our program is about how to cope and how to handle if you've got family members who don't really understand that your loved one is not the same as he or she used to be, or that maybe she doesn't like being around a lot of people anymore, or maybe she forgets people's names more easily, even though she's known them for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. Today is all about trying to figure out how to cope with it, how to make it better, and in some cases, when we can't make it better, how to make peace with it. So we're going to do a quick poll that we're going to ask you to write into the chat section. Do you personally currently feel like there are people that don't understand, that don't get that your loved one has a dementia? Yes, no, or not sure. Feel free to write in the chat section. So far, we have all yeses. I'm curious if anybody is saying no or if anybody's not sure. But so far, we've got all yeses. Okay, Bernadette says not sure. DB says no. Okay. Karen says not sure. So clearly, those who said yes, you're absolutely in the right place because you want some ideas. You want to talk to other people that are dealing with this. And feel free to write in the chat section and share anything that you say in the chat section. I'll share with everybody. But for those of you who are saying, I'm not sure, or if you're saying, no, actually, everybody else that in our family, our friend, our neighbor network, they get it. They understand. I would invite you to share your tips because obviously it's great for me as a professional to come in and talk to you about what works and what can help. But for any caregiver out there that's saying, you know what, everybody in our friend, family, neighbor network, they're fine. They get it. They're helpful. Feel free to write in if there's anything you did to make it that way, or if there's a reason, or if there's any kind of strategies you had so people really did understand. Or maybe you were just inordinately fortunate and people just understood. But feel free to write in because I want you to share your thoughts with the other family caregivers who are on today. But for those of you who said yes, you are absolutely in the right place. So for those of you who said you weren't sure, here are some signs that your friends, your family, your neighbors, that they don't get it. You're with your loved one and you're with maybe your neighbor and you're out front and maybe you're walking and they try to talk to your mom, your loved one who has dementia, about what's going on with COVID, how stressful and how tired everybody is of talking about COVID. And your mom doesn't seem to compute the conversation. And they say, hey, Mrs. Smith, come on now. It's been 2 years almost. You know, the whole thing with COVID. What do you think about the vaccines? What do you think about the masks? What do you think about them shutting down schools? You know, you've got to remember this. And they're trying to convince your loved one, hey, there's been this pandemic. There's been all this lockdowns and all these changes and all this stress. And your mom's saying, I have no idea what you're talking about. And they're trying to convince your loved one. They're trying to convince mom there's a pandemic. There was a pandemic. It's becoming endemic. When you are encountering somebody who's trying to convince your loved one with dementia of something, there's a sign that they don't get it. So I really welcome you to write in right now. What is an example that you've experienced with that, where somebody tried to convince your loved one of something? Maybe your brother, who I'm going to pick on the brother, I'm going to say he's in Vermont, and he doesn't do anything. He doesn't barely acknowledge that your Aunt Sue has vascular dementia, and you're doing all the work in Virginia or in DC. And your brother comes into town and he tries to say, hey, I'm your nephew. I'm your nephew, Joe. I live in Vermont. They're trying to convince, you know me. And you find yourself exploding with frustration. Joe, we've told you Aunt Sue does not recognize everybody anymore. You haven't seen her in 3 years. You can't expect her to recognize you. But they're trying to convince your loved one of something. That's a big surefire sign that they don't get it. They expect to have a quote unquote normal conversation with your loved one. So maybe your husband has Alzheimer's disease. And they say to your husband, maybe you're having dinner and you have company over for dinner and you've said to your friends a million times, remember that sometimes he kind of goes off and he won't follow along with the conversation. And maybe your husband says to your friends, do you believe that it's almost summer? And your friends will say, well, it's really not almost summer. It's really still January for those of us who are joining live. If you're listening to the recording, it might be later. And your husband then starts to talk about curtains. And then he starts to talk about the steak that you're eating. And his conversation is not linear. If the neighbors or the friends that are visiting and you're having dinner with them and they're expecting and they say, hey, let's go back to the fact that you said summer's coming up. What do you have planned for the summer? If they expect the conversation to go in a normal manner, in a normal line, that's a sign that they don't get it. And if you've had an example or an experience, feel free to share it with us. But that's another example that somebody does not understand what is going on with your loved one. This is one of my favorites. They think your loved one could try harder. They think your loved one could try harder. If mom really, really wanted to remember her grandkids, she could, but if she focused, if she tried harder, she'd be able to do it. And you know, because you're the one that visits her at the senior living community, you're the one that sees her the most. You're saying, no, it's not a matter of trying harder. It's a matter of she has frontotemporal dementia, and that has impacted her brain, that she simply sometimes will not be able to remember her grandkids. So if you ever have an experience, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Lakeisha, I hope it's correct. When family tried to convince Nana of something and Nana says, oh yeah, it's hard to convince them. Because we know if you get it, if you get the dementia, you've taken classes like this, you've read books, you've talked to the doctors, you understand, maybe you don't understand everything perfectly, but you've taken the time to try to understand. You know that sometimes Nana's compensating. Nana just maybe is feeling a little bit awkward. She has a little bit of that moment of clarity. I don't know for sure, but I don't want to embarrass myself. And so that's a great example. And it's really hard for you to probably watch because you're thinking, Nana doesn't really understand what they're saying. And now they're placated. They think, okay, she really did get it. But a lot of times family, friends, neighbors, oh, good. I said Lakeisha's name correctly. Great. Right. And Lakeisha, yeah, your embarrassment that she's worried about, because dementias are so tricky. There are moments where the person is just like us and they're going to have a moment where they think, well, I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to feel bad. But at the same time, they know that they don't know the answer. And so they have that clarity that, okay, they have still some of those social mores that they want to follow, social cues. So it's really, really uncomfortable and really, really tough for them. Other signs that they don't get it. They believe that your loved one is doing something annoying on purpose. You know, Dad asked 12 times in the last hour, when are we going to eat lunch? Why does he keep doing that? It's really annoying. And maybe they've offered to spend the afternoon with Dad. Maybe you went to go grocery shopping or you went to get your hair cut and they offered and you were a little bit reluctant to leave Dad with them because you think, God, they don't really get it. And they say, you know, it's really annoying. Or Dad keeps trying to get out the front door. Dad keeps going to the front door and trying to unlock it. And we have to keep telling him, Dad, you're not allowed to go out. It's really cold. You're going to get frostbite. It's so cold outside. They believe that your loved one, you know, he knows he's not allowed to do that. He knows he's not supposed to go out, and it's on purpose. And we know, because we know dementia, that Dad forgets from moment to moment. And those annoying, quote unquote, annoying behaviors are him trying to communicate with us. Maybe, and feel free to write in if you have ideas. Why might he ask over and over again, when's lunch? Why might he keep going to the door and turning the knob and trying to get outside? So I have a couple comments in here. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. DB says, you're changing your answer to yes. It seems like maybe you're covering for your mom. Yeah. That's interesting that maybe, yeah. So DB, I hope we're going to get into some strategies to help transform friends, family, and neighbors to understand dementia a little bit better. But we're also going to talk about kind of making peace if there's situations where that can't be done. But thank you for sharing that insight. I also have Ruby says, my husband has MCI, which is mild cognitive impairment. Most people don't know what it is, and it's not Alzheimer's. And when we were with my sisters-in-law, they sat me down and told me nothing's wrong. They were with him for 2 hours. Oh, my son told them to live with him for a week. Oh. Ruby, that is absolutely a textbook definition of people that don't get it. And of course, they're going to have their perspective. They were with him for 2 hours. And he might have a little bit of time. We know that there's a lot of moments when somebody has MCI, mild cognitive impairment, and which, just for everybody to know, it is for a lot of people, MCI it's more than normal aging. It's more than what happens to our normal aging brains, but it's not quite Alzheimer's or dementia. But a lot of people that have mild cognitive impairment eventually do develop Alzheimer's. Not always, but many do. But they're not quite like they used to be. And in fact, right now, if anybody happens to be watching the show This Is Us, in its 6th and final season, the character Rebecca actually has mild cognitive impairment. And I will tell you, I don't know that every single thing that the show has done has been completely medically accurate. I do think in a lot of cases, the portrayal is very good, but that's exactly right. There's a lot of people that might see the Rebecca character and say, they spent a couple hours with her. She's fine. She's great. And then maybe the next day they spend with her, but you're exactly right. Your son, Ruby, is correct. If they were with him for a week, they absolutely would see something that wasn't quite right. And I'm very sorry that those of you who are going through this, because it's almost like sometimes when other people don't get it, they almost make you feel like something's wrong with you. Like, why are you treating him like he's different? Why are you treating him like something's wrong? He's completely fine. It's in your head. Sometimes that can be the way that people cope, or they go into some level of denial. Treating your loved one like a child. So another area that we see a lot of people deal with somebody who has dementia is they start doing everything for them, and they talk down to them, and they forget that that person's a grown-up. And treating them like a child is, while I will admit a lot of the behaviors that somebody has when they have an Alzheimer's disease or another type of dementia, the brain is regressing, the brain is degenerating, and some behaviors are going to seem childlike, but your loved one is still a grown-up. They're still an adult. And treating your loved one like a child. Now, as much as there are people that just expect that person with dementia to be totally normal, we also see people, dementia, Alzheimer's, vascular, Lewy body, frontotemporal. Let's start making every decision for that person. Let's start telling them exactly what they're going to eat. Let's tell them everything they're going to wear. Let's tell them where they can go and where they can't. Now, in the very later stages, which we'll talk about in a few moments, there are going to be times where you do need to decide what your loved one is going to eat and where they can go. But especially in the early stages, there's much that person can still do for himself or herself. They often can dress themselves. I don't know if everybody remembers the case of Lady Vol's Tennessee coach Pat Summitt. She had young onset Alzheimer's. She had a job when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. She was coaching a winning basketball team at college level. And surely, I bet that there might have been people in her network that even though she's still out there doing her thing, people were treating her like a child. Did they say, they look at it as all or nothing. Either you're there mentally, cognitively, or you're not there. And Alzheimer's and the other types of dementia don't really work like that. There's a lot of moments where you're going to be able to have, especially in the early and sometimes even in the middle stages, you're going to be able to have conversations with your loved one. Are they going to be exactly like they were before the diagnosis? No, but you're going to be able to have meaningful conversations with them. In the late stages, it's much, much harder. feel free to write in again if you have any comments, any questions, anything you want to address. This hour is all about you. So when people hear dementia, and I think a lot of this has to do with the great marketing job that the Alzheimer's Association has done, most people, when they hear dementia, they have gotten to the point where they think memory loss, short-term memory loss. They're not going to remember maybe the date or the season, or that they just maybe saw somebody 2 days ago. Most people, not everybody, but a lot of lay people really have come to terms with that, and they understand that. But a lot of people, when they hear dementia, they don't know much more than that, that they just, okay, something's not right with that person's brain, memory is impacted. But really, there are four, and let's just use Alzheimer's because it's the most common form. 70% of all dementias are Alzheimer's type. We know, so the amnesia, people generally understand the amnesia, but people experience apraxia, which is trouble with their bodily movements. So getting up from a chair, walking across the room takes more brain power. Maybe something that, you might reaching for something can be part of Alzheimer's disease. The loss of ability to use words or understand phrases. And so when we say, hey, what would you like to have for a beverage, John? And John says, television. And he might actually have understood the question, and he's trying to get the word out to say, I'd like to have water, I'd like to have juice, but he's not able to do it. Or could be he totally didn't understand the question. He might have thought the question was, what'd you do this afternoon? So a lot of people that haven't gone to classes like this, haven't read books, haven't talked to doctors, they don't understand all these other moving parts that go along with an Alzheimer's diagnosis. And then the agnosia is the inability to recognize people, things, places. We hear from a lot of people who have Alzheimer's and other types of dementia, I want to go home. I want to go home. And they are home. And it might be they're in the home that they've lived in for 40 years, but they don't recognize it. They're thinking of a home they lived in as a child. Or even we see this a lot when someone's in a senior living, maybe they've even lived there for 5 years and they're saying, I want to go home. Not recognizing people. And this is absolutely devastating. I don't remember my husband, and I've been married to him for 60 years. I don't remember my adult kids. I think it's my sister when I see my daughter. Internally, I don't realize that my bladder is full, or that I'm thirsty, or that I'm hungry, or that I'm full. I keep asking when lunch is, but I just ate. So the person that you care about has a new language, and it's the dementia's fault. People generally, your friends, your neighbors, your family who don't get the dementia diagnosis, generally get, okay, it impacts memory. I've wrapped my head around that. I don't expect the memory to be perfect, but why is her physical body, why is she not able to always do the things that everybody else does? But they also often struggle understanding, why is the communication and language so different? The person with dementia has a new language, but we have to learn it. And people in your friend, family, neighbor network, if they really want to be a true part of your loved one's life, we want to encourage them to use the new language. They can't keep using ours. It changes typically every few years. For example, Alzheimer's, the person lives roughly 8, 9, 10 years. Everybody's different. But as somebody progresses through the stages and the phases, the way that they are communicating in their language will be a little different every couple of years. So in Cruising Through Caregiving, the book that you're going to receive free courtesy of Brightview Senior Living, I write about the idea that when somebody has dementia, it's like visiting a foreign country. So the first stage, so let's say, we'll make it even. Let's say somebody's got Alzheimer's, and you can make these same analogies when you're talking about other types of dementia as well. But let's use Alzheimer's because it's the most common type as an example. So let's just say, for argument's sake, the first 3 years are early stages, and it's like visiting Ireland. Being in the early stages of Alzheimer's is like visiting Ireland unprepared. Being in, excuse me, the mid stages, the second 3 years of Alzheimer's, is like visiting Italy unprepared. And then for the last stage, the last 3 years of Alzheimer's is the late stages, and that's like visiting Yemen unprepared. So let's talk a little bit more about what that means. Kay is saying, how does one address the internal agnosia of thinking that her bladder is full? So Kay, I think if you can give any more details so I could be really specific to your question, I'd love to hear them. So I'm going to keep talking and I want to hear a little bit more. Give me an example of something that has happened, or if it has happened many times where she thinks her bladder is full. Give as many details as you feel comfortable so I can try to answer that question. So let's talk a little bit about the idea of the new language. So the early stages of Alzheimer's. So let's assume that everybody on this call, on this program today, is somebody that grew up in the United States. I know that there may be people that did not grow up in the US, but I'm just going to assume that for this metaphor that we're doing. Excuse me. So early stages of Alzheimer's, I liken that to, you're in the United States and tonight you have not prepared at all, but we're going to put you on an airplane and we're going to send you to Dublin. We're going to send you to Ireland, but you haven't prepared. You haven't done any research. You've never been to Ireland. You're going to get over there and you're going to be okay. Because why? Because a lot is going to be very familiar. They speak English. A lot of what they write and read in English, even though there's some Gaelic over there. The food's going to look familiar. Yes, it's going to be greener. Yes, they drink probably more Guinness than we do. But for the most part, somebody from the United States visiting Ireland without a lot of preparation is going to be okay. You're going to do all right. Now, would you probably have a better experience and navigate it more easily if you've read about Ireland and the cities you're visiting, if you learned a little bit about the Irish culture? Yes. But what I'm trying to compare this to is the early stages of Alzheimer's. So in the early stages of Alzheimer's, you and I, if we're talking to somebody or caring for someone in those early stages, we're going to do okay because a lot of the moments that we have with them, they are their old self. They can hang on to a conversation. They can follow. Now they're going to have moments where they fall off and they don't respond the way they usually would. Or they're going to have maybe a moment where they wander out of the house, but then there's going to be a lot of times, like Ruby's, I believe it's your spouse, Ruby's spouse, where 2 hours, it's all good. It's all good. And I know your husband has MCI. I understand that that's different. But even if it's early stages of Alzheimer's, that people, and I'm gonna give you an example. There was an event, an in-person event I did, where there was a woman in the audience, and you saw this screen when I first came on screen. It had my name on it, FitzPatrick, and I was in an in-person meeting room and my name's up there, and I was wandering around talking to the audience. Not wandering, I was moving around in the audience talking to people before my presentation. And this woman calls me over and she says, hi. And it was for family caregivers, the event. And she says, hi, so you're a FitzPatrick? I said, I am. And she says, oh, I have a friend, grew up, and she tells me where she and the friend grew up. And do you know this person? And I said, oh, I don't. Actually, it's my husband's name. It's my married name, but there's a lot of FitzPatricks out there, but no, I don't know your friend. And so I go, excuse myself, talking to a couple other people in the audience. I go back up, do my presentation. About an hour later, the presentation's over, and that very same woman calls me over. And I thought she was going to make a comment about my presentation or ask a question. And she says, can you come here? I said, yeah. And she says, you're FitzPatrick? I saw FitzPatrick is your name. And I said, yeah. Same story. Now I want to tell you about this woman. So she was actually there with her husband. She had early stages of Alzheimer's. I didn't realize that at the time. Her husband was going and getting them beverages when I talked to her the first time. Her husband was there for the caregiving advice and caregiving information, but I had no idea. She was dressed beautifully, makeup, earrings. She was just like you and I. And it's just like Ruby's husband. And I believe it's your husband. Please tell me if I'm incorrect, Ruby. That I didn't know. And I can only imagine that if she has moments, but clearly she was there with her husband. So there's a lot of moments in the early stages where somebody is just like us. And so I liken that to visiting Ireland without doing a lot of prep. Yeah. Lakeisha says, that's just it. You can't tell. It depends on the day. And that's why it's very hard for friends and family to understand. Okay, Kay, I'm going to talk a little bit to okay, mom has been tested for urinary tract infection. She's negative. She needs to do exercises to lift the bladder. She says she is up and down at night, needing to go to the bathroom. Not sure if she's drinking water too late or if it's agnosia. Her memory is getting shorter. She's in the mid stages. So, and I'm really sorry to ask you this, but I'm wondering, does she live alone? Is she in senior living? Does she live with you? I guess and I'm sorry, Kay, I'm not trying to, I just want to make sure I give you as good of an answer as I possibly can. So what do you want to address? Do you want her, is she talking about having to go to the bathroom? You said she's up and down. Is that creating problems? Like, are you afraid she's going to wander out of the house? I'm just a little bit curious. What's the problem? Is it a problem for you? Is it a problem for her? Is it a problem for the staff if she's at senior living? And I really am not trying to make you keep typing. I just want to make sure I'm giving you the best answer that I can. So, Lakeisha, I think one of the ways we can explain it to people who just don't get it is to say to them, look, can you imagine if somebody has cancer or heart disease or any chronic illness, which we know that Alzheimer's and other dementias are degenerative and they are terminal, but there are good days and bad days with heart disease. There are good days and bad days with cancer. Okay. So that's one way that I try to explain it, and not everybody gets it, I know. But Kay says she lives on her own with her husband and it's frustrating for her. Yeah. Okay. So Kay, I'm going to try to give you the best answer that I can. You might, if she is really truly in the mid stages of dementia, you might try to talk to her husband about trying to limit the water late at night. Now, of course, we don't want her to become dehydrated, but drinking earlier in the day and trying to maybe encourage her to go to the bathroom before she goes to bed. And it sounds like it's very frustrating to her. That said, if she really is up and down all night, I'm curious if her husband would say she's truly up and down all night, or if she, in her mind, thinks that she's up and down all night. Maybe she's getting up once. So it could be because of the way her memory is. If you're saying she's truly in the mid stages of dementia, it could be that. That said, it absolutely could be agnosia. It absolutely could be. I would talk to the doctor about it for sure. I think it's great. They went and they looked for a UTI. The exercises for the bladder, I think if her husband could cue her to do the exercises, I'm not sure how old your mom is. I'm not sure what kind of relationship that they have. I know sometimes between husbands and wives of certain cultures and generations, that can be very uncomfortable to talk about those kinds of exercises. Or maybe if you're over there, or if you call, you can say, oh, did you do your exercises? Maybe I'll sit on the phone with you while you do them, something like that. But yeah, so those are just a couple of suggestions that I would make. Actually, we offer free 15-minute care consultations. Elena, if you can find that link, if people want to sign up for that, they can certainly, you can put that link in if you can. or you can just email Elena. She can put her email address in and we can send you information. If you want to get into a little more detail on a phone call with me, but also the Area Agency on Aging who's sponsoring this, they are another great place to talk to. Another place that you might call is the 800 number at the Alzheimer's Association. And I'm going to actually put that in here. The care line, 800-272-3900. That's 24 hours a day that you can call there. So I'd talk to the doctor. If you want to do a 15-minute free complimentary care consult with us, Elena will try to put that in, or you can just email Elena and she'll send me your information. I'll send you the link. And then the last piece of it would be Alzheimer's hotline, or the Area Agency on Aging, Loudoun County Area Agency on Aging, who is sponsoring today. And Elena, if you want to put their contact information in again, or if you want to, that would be terrific as well. Okay, so pardon me. So I'm going to get to the second stage. So the second stage is the mid-stage. So let's say I'm putting you on an airplane tonight. You're going to Rome. We're flying you to Italy, but you haven't prepped. You don't speak Italian. You've never been there. You're going to get to Italy, and it's going to be different. Especially let's say you get to Rome and then we're sending you out to Tuscany, which is more rural. And most people do not speak English in that area. So I've been there, most people don't. And I was not a good traveler. I did not do the prep as much as I should have. So I didn't download the app, so English to Italian. I didn't read about the different areas and the different cultural issues and food and what have you. But guess what? It's Italy. So we're all familiar with Italian food. A lot looked familiar, and they speak a Romance language. Most of us, even in elementary school or high school, we've taken some kind of Romance language. So you're going to pick up some words here and there, even if you don't speak Italian. But there are going to be moments when you're really face to face with somebody who doesn't speak English and you don't speak Italian, where you're not going to connect. It's going to be harder. But you might be relying on gesturing. So if you want a beverage, you want to refill on your beverage, you might hold up your cup. Or you need to go to the bathroom, you might squat down and make that sign that we all make when we, where's the bathroom? Or if you are hungry, you might rub your tummy or something like that. So you're going to get there, and the other person's going to get or you might hold up a map, for example, or hold up your phone with a map on it, more likely. So the mid-stage, that's what I like in the mid-stage of dementia, is a lot of it is familiar, but a lot of it is not. And if you haven't done the research, if you haven't read the books, if you haven't taken classes like this, if you haven't talked to Loudoun County Area Agency on Aging, you're going to be lost in some ways when you're face to face with somebody who they don't speak your language, you don't speak their language. The last example that I want to give you is the late stages. And somebody in the very late stages of Alzheimer's, not only are they, so the early stages, the person is going to have moments where they don't remember you, or when they're getting dressed, they might pick out and put on something that's not clean. The mid stages, they're going to have a lot of moments where they don't recognize you more, and they might not even be able to do their buttons anymore. Now, the late stages, they're probably not going to be able to recognize many people at all. They've pretty much lost their verbal abilities. And in terms of the late stages, there is very few, they're really communicating by gesturing, by touch. That's how they're telling you what they need, what they want. And so I liken this phase to Yemen. If you go to Yemen with no prep, if I put you on a plane to go to Yemen and you don't prep, you don't read about the culture, you don't learn Arabic, you are going to be in big trouble, because you're going to get over there. And number one, women are treated very differently. Gesturing that we might find very acceptable might be very offensive to people in Yemen. There are behaviors that we might exhibit that might put us in jail if we're in Yemen. The food is going to look very different. And so it really is a foreign country. So if, let's say you have a friend or a family member or a neighbor who hasn't seen your loved one in 3 years, and now they're in the late stages and they're bedbound and they can't talk anymore, they're not gonna get it. And so the reason that I'm giving you this metaphor is think about where you believe your loved one is. And you can use the same ideas with any type of dementia. Are they in Ireland? Are they in Italy? Are they in Yemen? And try to explain it like that to the people that don't get it. Try to use some of these examples and say, if you want to connect, you gotta sort of learn that language. And so specifically for the late stages, the person is not only like, okay, mid stages, you might say, what would you like to drink? And they say, phone. The late stages, you say, what would you like to drink? And maybe they grab your hand. And it's very hard. But people who have spent a lot of time with that loved one over many years, they learn to get the cues. Okay, she's grabbing my hand really hard. She's thirsty, or she grabs my hand really hard when she wants orange juice. When I took care of my husband's grandmother when she was dying of cancer, up until the last day or so, she could tell us what she wanted. She was hot, she was cold, she was hungry, she was tired. Same thing with my grandfather who died of cancer. Same exact thing. He could tell us what he wanted. In fact, I remember being in the hospital room with my grandfather when he was a couple of days away from passing away. And at one point, there was maybe, like 10 of us in the ICU in the room with him. And everybody's talking and we're a loud family. And all of a sudden he says, everybody get the hell out. Those are his exact words. Now, my grandfather never used swear words, but he actually said, get the hell out. He could tell us exactly what he wanted. And he was at end stage with cancer. Somebody with Alzheimer's disease is almost never going to be able to do that. They're not going to have the verbal ability. So when they want you out, maybe they want privacy. Maybe they're tired. They want to take a nap. Maybe you're being too loud. Maybe they're going to turn their head away from the people in the room. Maybe they're going to pull the covers over their head. They're going to gesture. They're going to cue. Body language, facial expressions are so important, especially all of the stages, but especially with the middle and most importantly with the late. And so this is a way that I think you can try to get through to some of your loved ones. I'm sorry, some of the people in your life that don't get it. So how do you get them to understand? Now, I know, obviously coming to an event like this would be great, but we know that a lot of these folks, I don't need it. Nothing's wrong with dad. Nothing's wrong with my sister. Nothing's wrong with my mom. Going to a support group, I think oftentimes, if you can get them right now, it's easier than ever because there's so many opportunities online. They don't have to drive. Even if they can go to one support group, if you have a support group you really like, getting them to go to that and just listen. We Are HFC. This is a nonprofit that was started by the actor Seth Rogen and his wife, Lauren Miller Rogen. Lauren's mom had young onset Alzheimer's, and this is a wonderful charity that does all kinds of star-studded events for family caregivers of people who have dementia. So I'm actually going to tell you about the one that's coming up on HFC. Give me one moment. I'm going to give you the exact date because I'm actually one of the speakers, but they're actually having all kinds of surprise celebrity guests because Seth Rogen and Lauren Rogen have a lot of celebrity friends. I'm going to just tell you the exact date. It's completely and totally free, and it's called CareCon. And if you go to hfc.org, you can find out the information. But CareCon is totally virtual and totally free, and it is going to be held. Oh dear. Actually, can you Google that real quick, Elena? CareCon, it's in February. I want to make sure we're giving folks the right date. But the reason I feel like that's like a sneaky one to get family and friends that you want engaged is because, there's comedians that are going to be like, there's going to be people like me, but there's going to be comedians and actors. And so go to that. That's one that can kind of be like, it's entertainment. They're going to do entertaining stuff as well. Books. So obviously you're all welcome to get a free copy of my book, Cruising Through Caregiving, but The Validation Breakthrough by Naomi Feil, Peter Rabin's 36-Hour Day. I think Dr. Ruth Westheimer's book, The Caregiver's Guide to Alzheimer's, is especially a really, really good one for spouses if there's a spouse that doesn't get it, maybe you're taking care of the parent and your dad or your step parent or your mom doesn't understand what's going on. They're maybe in some denial. I think that's a really good one. Another one, pardon me, that I think can be really helpful for people who maybe wouldn't go to a support group or read a book, but there are some great Hollywood movies that we can sometimes see ourselves in. Still Alice is a really good one. Julianne Moore won an Academy Award for playing Alice, who had young onset Alzheimer's. The Savages is a great one if there's sibling caregiving, because the sister is pretty in denial, the Laura Linney character, and the Philip Seymour Hoffman character is much more pragmatic about what's going on with their father. The Notebook, probably everyone has seen The Notebook, but the reason I suggest these as resources to sort of get people to understand a little bit better, maybe watch it together with your sister that doesn't get it and say, gosh, that scene really reminded me of something we're going through with dad right now. Or ask her to watch it. Iris is another one with Kate Winslet and Judi Dench. Thank you very much. Yeah, February 18th is the HFC event, which we put in the chat section. So another documentary, and I'm not going to ask Elena to find this, but the Alzheimer's Project Caregivers on HBO. If you just Google that, you can watch it on your computer, or if you have, actually, you can just watch it on your computer. I don't even think you need a subscription to HBO for it. I'm pretty sure you don't, but it's another one. I think everybody learns differently, and everybody's going to have their different taste of how they want to learn. But I think we also need to know that sometimes there are going to be people in your life, friends, siblings, people in your family who love you, love your spouse or your dad or whoever it is you're caring for, and they're never going to get it. They're never going to get it. They're going to either be in denial, or they think, you're dealing with it. And they don't have the time or energy. They're not going to make the time and put the energy in to learn. I just want to remember her the way she was. You being a family caregiver is very special and unique. A lot of people do not step up to the plate, and a lot of people never get it. They never get it. And so what I want to encourage you to do, so I want you to try, if you feel like the person's open to it, but I'm not saying give up. There's some people that, like, if you keep trying and you give them resources and they say, I want to learn, great. But there are going to be people in your life that disappoint you, and they're never going to get it. And so what I want to encourage you to do is, when you come to an event like this, when we are doing them in person again, we are actually out and about doing events. I have a feeling 2022 is going to get way better with events in person. But if and when you do go to an in-person event, try to make friends, learn from the other people that are caregiving. When you go to an online support group, and I'm sure Loudoun County Area Agency on Aging is definitely got a list for you of options. Make friends, learn from other people. And here's the thing about it. You might be so disappointed that your sister or your niece or your stepdaughter, whoever it is not getting it, and they're not participating, and they just disappoint you so very much. But you've got to keep your eyes and your mind open to the people that are going to get it, and they're going to step up and be there for you. But you have to be open to that. You're going to find support in unexpected ways if you let people know that you are open to it. So if you are stuck on, I'm so angry that my brother doesn't do it, or my stepdaughter doesn't get it, or my sister-in-law just doesn't, she's not helping, and they don't understand what I'm going through, there is help for you. Sometimes there are people that are just going to let you down. And so support groups, but also psychotherapists. And right now it's easier than ever to do psychotherapy. Now, I've been a psychotherapist. I don't think that people should do psychotherapy online indefinitely. I think it's good to see your therapist in person sometimes, but it's an easy way to do counseling right now. So if you are feeling resentful and angry and stuck and just so disappointed, just try to make your peace with, you do your part, you try to make them share the Ireland, Italy, Yemen. Talk about the books that you like, talk about the movies that you like and what you learned from them. But know that some people are just never going to get it, and look for the support where you can find it in places like this. So I want to thank everybody for being with us here today. We still have 10 minutes for questions. So I want you to feel free to open up the chat section and get in there, write down your questions, write down your comments, and let us know what you're thinking. If you have a question for, pardon me, for me, about anything specific that's going on with your personal caregiving, I call it a voyage because of cruising through caregiving, but a lot of people call it your caregiving journey. I want you to feel free to write it in, and know that you're going to get a free copy of Cruising Through Caregiving, courtesy of Brightview Senior Living. If you complete, it will take you 10 seconds to fill out the form, and you're going to get it come right to your home. It should be to your home within the next week or so if you give us your address. No PO boxes, please. So feel free to write into the chat section. I'm going to stand by. Going to leave it open. If you're typing, don't worry. We're going to keep it open for a moment. So let's just, while hopefully some people are typing some comments, some questions, remember some of the resources we talked about. I'm just going to scroll back just so you can look at them one more time. The Alzheimer's Project, some of the Hollywood movies is a sneaky way to get people to, it's entertainment, but these are some ways to say, gosh, I really relate to that daughter in Still Alice, or the husband, the Alec Baldwin character. Or I think that's sort of like, I know dementia is not fun, I'm not saying that, but these might be more palatable to people that are not really wanting to learn. And then a couple of other, some of the books, 36-Hour Day, The Validation Breakthrough, Dr. Ruth's Guide to Alzheimer's Care, which I really like that one for spouses. We Are HFC, it's another one. And we talked about CareCon, which it's another kind of sneaky one. Celebrities, comedians are going to be on that. They don't have to necessarily, and it's interesting because they sometimes have celebrities like Lauren talk about their caregiving experience, which is, I think, really powerful. You think sometimes about people that are celebrities and they have a lot of wealth, and caregiving must be easy for them when they have a loved one with dementia. They might have a little bit more financial resources, but just as hard emotionally. So just a couple of other resources. Yeah, and absolutely. Lakeisha saying thank you to Brightview for the book. Absolutely. And just one last time, if Elena would please put the link in, and please it take 15 seconds, just put your name, your address, and we'll send you the book within the next week or so. All right, any last comments or questions, and we will wrap up. And I hope you all enjoy the weekend. And truly, truly, I mean it, being a family caregiver, there are tons of people who don't do what you're doing. They are not involved in their loved one's life. You know them. You know people that don't help. And so you're doing a really special and loving thing by being there for your loved one who has dementia. So thank you for doing it. Bob actually has a question. Mom is 95 in assisted living. You think she has MCI, mild cognitive impairment. You, Bob, are 67. You live 4 miles away. Mom's very independent and pushes back on all help efforts, spying. I'm controlling her, trying to manage everything in her life. She's often mean. Ideas. Okay. So this is sort of a really long loaded question. And Bob, if you want to do a consult, I'd be glad to do that with you. And you can email Elena, or you can, just because we are a little bit at the end of time, I would definitely see if you have access to her doctor, if you have permission, I would try to see if her doctor has the same thoughts and concerns that you do. Of course, a doctor sees your mom for very short periods of time, less than you do, I'm sure. But you can always share your insights with your mom, with the mom's doctor. You can email or call and just give the information that you're concerned about. Know that it is normal. I guess my question, it is normal for her to push back because she's independent. She's been independent for 95 years. That's very normal. So I think in a lot of ways that's really healthy. I would ask you to think about what specifically does she think you're trying, what is spying, like what are the examples that she gives that you're spying or that you're trying to control her? I'd want specific examples. How are you trying to manage her life? What are you doing that is causing her concern or disruption or to be mean to you? And here's the deal. Just real brief, and feel free to write in if you have them, if you're able to. I'd really love to just give you a little bit more feedback if I can. But here's the thing with that. If she has MCI, she's in assisted living, she's already locked in with some support. And I would try to communicate with the assisted living. What does the assisted living think? What are their thoughts? Have you had a meeting with them lately with your mom present? What kind of, I really would like to know, what is your worry? Like, what are you concerned about? She is in assisted living, so she has some help in place. But also, what are you exactly doing that she's accusing you of controlling and spying? Oh, I wish this question came up earlier because I'd love to dig into this a little bit more. We only have a couple minutes left. Okay. Oh, okay. Importance of eating properly. Won't eat. She's losing weight. Okay. Lakeisha said she's got something similar. All right. So Bob, I'm not suggesting that eating properly isn't important, but it's one of those areas where I would be really, she's 95. She's been managing her own diet for a long time. She has access to healthy food. She's at a senior living community. It's one of those areas I'd be careful about picking my battles. I'm not saying that it's not important, but when we look at, so, okay, proper eating, all of us, like most of us are not eating perfectly all the time. Think about, like, if your kid said to you, Bob, Dad, you're not eating properly, you're losing weight, you're gaining weight, whatever. I'm not saying that it's not important. I'm not saying that at all, but I think, is it something that you can fix? It is possible that she's forgetting to eat. And so, oh gosh, now a lot of people are writing and they've got similar experiences to Bob. Mom can get mean too. Yeah. I think one thing that can really inspire mean behavior in folks that have dementia is, and I shouldn't have used the word inspire, but trigger mean behavior. But is when we argue with them, when we try to use logic and reason. So Bob, if your mom really truly has mild cognitive impairment, it's possible that it's not computing for her totally. Like, her doctor's saying, you do have MCI, they want you to gain 5 pounds, you're not eating, coffees and Cheez-Its. And that does happen a lot with dementia. And a lot of people get really fired up about it. They're like, oh my gosh, my loved one's not eating. And I'm sure that it would be good for her to gain weight. I think the other thing you might talk to the assisted living about is about cueing her, trying to get her to come to the meals, trying to offer her healthy snacks like fruit and things with more, maybe power bars or, whatever kind of healthy snacks they might have. I know some people don't think power bars are healthy, but something that has a lot, more calories. So I would talk to the assisted living about what kind of interventions they might be able to do too. But again, if you're interested in a 15-minute consult to see if caregiving consulting, would work for you, you're welcome to make an appointment. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm sorry, I wish I had some more of these, I had these questions earlier, but it is time for us to wrap up. And I'm going to let Elena take us away and wrap up our program. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the weekend.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And thank you again to the Loudoun County Area Agency on Aging for sponsoring today's program. They will be sponsoring another program with Generations Health on February 23rd. If you would like to join us for that webinar, please check out Generations Health website or email the Loudoun County Area Agency on Aging directly at aaa support@loudoun.gov for more details. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you would like a free copy of Cruising Through Caregiving, please click the link in the chat box for more details. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.